Welcome to the Total Soccer Show Weekend Review. In the League Cup final, Nico O'Reilly was the perfect pupil as Man City ended Arsenal's chances of a quadruple. The City fullback got a brace and was quite the hot stepper and took advantage of a bad day for Kepa. It wasn't Arsenal's day, but it could be worse because they could be fans of their neighbours Spurs. The problems for the Lilywhires are far from overblown as they continue to circle above the relegation zone. Elsewhere, Liverpool don't seem to be having much fun, and everywhere they go, Chelsea are getting outrun. And in the Bundesliga, Bayern can't stop scoring. And in Spain, the Madrid Derby was anything but boring. My name's Ryan Bailey. Joining me today, hello Taylor Rockwell. How are you?
I am well, Ryan Bailey. I am so well that I'm giving you a 9 out of 10 for that introduction. It's a provisional 9 out of 10 because I have one question for you. In what way is Nico O'Reilly a pupil? Or did you just need to be able to rhyme something with quadruple?
He's young.
That. And also what
because you could go academy and you could go youngster, and he's studied at the school of Pep Guardiola, if not his wardrobe, then his tactics.
Sounds like you've answered your chippy question already, Taylor.
It stays at 9 out of 10. You had a chance, but 9 out of 10 it is.
I'd bump him down to 8 for that attitude, frankly.
Wow. Hello, Graham Ruthven. How are you?
I'm good, Ryan Bailey. It's good to have you back. How was Los Angeles as your star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame? Still there?
It is indeed, yes. Thank you for asking. Right on Hollywood Boulevard outside a smoke shop, which is what most of the things are there. Or
okay, cool.
Souvenir shops and stuff. It's Hollywood, Graham, as my children found out on this weekend trip we did, is not as glamorous in many places as one may expect.
What?
I know.
That is shocking.
The home of Skid Row? I can't possibly accept that. What was it that gave that away, Ryan?
There was a lot of unhoused folk on every corner, which is unfortunate, but I suppose, that's a problem that's been there for a long time. But like the really nice parts of Hollywood are right next to really horrible bits, is the best way I could describe it in terms of the stores. And you go one block to the next and you're like, oh, I've gone a block too far.
This Lululemon hasn't been cleaned.
Is this still their fall collection?
Gross.
City's in shambles.
Gross. I can only see one Hard Rock Cafe from this corner. That's disgraceful. Absolutely disgraceful. But I had a good weekend, and thank you for Graham for establishing where I actually was, because apparently on the feed that was a bit.
I was the only one who picked up on the fact that you were going on a plane, and so I do remember that you told me you were going to Los Angeles. You were just you were just scoping out the joint, right, for ahead of the World Cup this summer. You were just.
That's right. That's right.
That
yes.
prep work.
Total Soccer Show. We will be on the West Coast for this World Cup. We can't wait to get back there. Indeed, for that one, plenty going on this summer, of course, in Los Angeles for us. Yeah, scoping it out. I went and saw our Airbnb. It's fine.
Thanks.
Well booked. Good job, Graham. Patreon.com/Total Soccer Show. If you'd like to support us in our Los Angeles endeavours and much more, there's bonus episodes. You'll get bonus weekend review on there. Weekend review extra goes there. All the weekend we can't fit into this show. And there is a lot of this show to come, dear listener. You can get that on weekend review extra. You get bonus video content and access to our Discord. Most of the cool kids. All the cool kids. Let's upgrade it. All the cool kids are hanging out on our Discord. Patreon.com/Total Soccer Show. Thank you to everyone who supports us. We love them, don't we, Taylor?
We very much do. It allows us to do many of the fun things we get to do. It allows us to do additional coverage of additional leagues and games and talk about silly things along the way. And then it allows you all to talk about tennis and F1. Even though that is very much unsanctioned when it happens. It still occurs from time to time. And I guess we just let it go.
We might be talking about golf this week, Taylor, because it's Masters weekend, and I know that you're really excited for that. We did get an AMA. I don't know whether we're going to do this on. I think we should. We should do this on the Patreon. We got an AMA about Rory McIlroy's Masters dinner that he gets to choose, and someone in the Discord, Taylor, wants to know your opinion on that. So maybe we should do that.
All right. Is it a good dinner?
To me, it looked quite good. It's not stereotypically British or Irish, which is, I mean, in a positive way.
Spice bag
Tacos.
No spice bag, unfortunately.
Very good. We look forward to that on the bonus feed. Patreon.com/Total Soccer Show. Please and thank you. One more thing before we get to the weekend. You may notice, dear listener, that we have an international break coming up And that means the USMNT are back in action, taking on Belgium in Atlanta this coming Saturday. If you're not able to get to Atlanta, why don't you go to youtube.com and find our channel? We're doing a watch-along. We're doing a watch-along for USMNT versus Belgium. It kicks off at 3:30 Eastern, so we'll be on probably about 3:15. Come and say hello to us there. It's going to be a lot of fun. There's going to be 4 of us as well. Mr. Joe Larry on the feed with us as well there. So do join us there. YouTube, watch-along, notes, show notes, link, etc. Find us there. Very good. Let's go and review the weekend, shall we? We'll start off with the League Cup final at Wembley Stadium. The aforementioned pupil, Nico O'Reilly, getting a brace in this one. The opener taking advantage of Kepa, having a Kepa moment and a header 4 minutes after that as well. So we had the underdogs, Taylor. The underdogs of Manchester City winning the trophy here. The 16th major trophy of Pep Guardiola's career. The first coach to win the League Cup 5 times. Those 3 handles have been in his hands so many times. But we had, I think, my TLDR on the action, Taylor, pretty even first half. City turned on the Jets in the second half. Is that fair?
Yeah, it is. And I suspect that if we then watched it again, kind of knowing how things played out, maybe that first half is not quite as even as we thought. Because the first 15 or 20, I mean, by Pep's own admission, it looked for all the world like Arsenal had this in the bag. It looked like they were playing their game. It looked like City were kind of backs against the wall. And really importantly, it looked like Pep's tactical tinkering had not worked. He had the front 3 in the attack. They stayed high, they stayed wide. But there was no real connective tissue for City through the middle. They were really struggling to kind of find any level of possession or any level of attacking consistency. And then I think Arsenal got a little bit tired. I think City started to play their game. And I think most importantly, the ball switched halves, and now it was Arsenal trying to build out. And I think City had some really interesting ways of limiting what Arsenal wanted to do. Basically, from that moment on, it felt for all the world like City were going to become this kind of dominant force. The commentators, I'm going long, I apologize. The commentators kept saying like over and over again, like, this is just one-way traffic. This is the most dominant performance we've seen. And it was still 0-0 at the time. That felt a little bit hyperbolic, but I believe City scored about 30 seconds after that comment was made.
Yeah.
And so maybe it wasn't quite as like one-sided as it ended up feeling at the end of the game. But I think for the way City were able to get their goals and then the way Arsenal were really not able to offer much of a threat, it did end up feeling like a pretty dominant win for City.
Yeah, I think that's all very fair, Taylor. I mean, in the first half, City didn't have their first shot of the game until the 43rd minute, and Haaland's first touch inside the box didn't come until the 44th minute. So I thought that was a big part of Arsenal's success. In the first half, they obviously have that opportunity for Kai Havertz as well when he's played through and James Trafford makes that save from close range. And they were doing a really good job of closing up to Doku really quickly, stopping him having any real influence on the game. It felt like the only effective funnel into the attack for Man City was through Semenyo on the right side. Otherwise, Arsenal had a pretty good grip of the game. But even as the first half progressed, there was a shift where Arsenal just couldn't play out from the back. They kept getting bogged down with the ball in their own defensive line. And there's 2 sides to this. One was how effective City were in setting up in that front 4 and allowing Arsenal to play themselves into trouble. It wasn't really a high press at all. They were standing and watching Arsenal as Nketiah and Saliba and Gabriel and Kepa just couldn't figure out a way into the midfield. They blocked those passing lanes into Zubimendi and Rice. And when you don't have Eze and Odegaard, who are both injured for this game, to get on the turn and in between the lines, Arsenal just didn't have enough ideas on how to score a goal in this match. And that really cost them in the second half. I mean, the second half totally swung towards City. Arsenal had no response. I thought City were much bolder at punching the ball into their forward players. They did push that line of confrontation further and further up the pitch. And Arsenal shrunk. They failed to complete a single progressive pass from the second half, from the start of the second half, until the 71st minute. And as I say, I understand Odegaard is injured, Ez is out due to injury in this game as well. That's a big blow. But there wasn't any plan to absorb those losses, and Havertz wasn't nimble enough for what Arsenal needed him to do in that position and get on the turn in the half spaces. And just to repeat my point, didn't have enough ideas, and by the time they did react and they bring on Calafiori, who I think in hindsight should have started to at least give them a different option out from the back, and he likes to push into those central areas, that might have helped them with some overloads. But by the time they made that change, Arteta also brings on Martinelli and Jesus. It was a weird camel of a team with Zubimendi on his own in midfield and Declan Rice at right back, and none of it really worked in the second half.
There's a moment when Madueke is getting his final instructions, and Gabriel Jesus is still sitting on the bench. I wish I'd taken a screen grab of it, but he is kind of halfway engaged in a conversation with somebody on the bench and halfway listening. And as a result, his expression while listening, this will go well for the listeners, is essentially like that. He's kind of wide-eyed with quizzical eyebrows looking at the coach while listening. And it felt for all the world like this is not a good level of tactical preparation. It does not feel like there is consistency in what is being conveyed and instructed. And that is more or less how it played out. So it did seem like Arsenal had a way they wanted to cause City problems, and maybe did for those first 15. But then to Graham's point, they didn't have the answers, lacking some of those players. They also didn't seem like they really tried to make adjustments to find a way through what City were doing. It felt like they were kind of content to okay, we'll go long then, and we'll contest 50-50s, and we'll try to win the second ball. And again, going back to Pep's comments after the game, he talked about how the only time their system, their defensive approach, that front four didn't work is when they were losing the second balls after the initial 50-50. Once they sort of started crowding numbers over, making sure that their responses were much more immediate as soon as that long ball was played, they start winning that second ball or the 50-50 first time, and then they're able to kind of counter-press from there, or counterattack from there, rather. But that front four, Graham, for a moment, you're totally right. That was not pressing. There's a really good compilation of it on Reddit, at least, that you can find. It feels in moments like players haven't even been activated, like it's a video game and they're frozen. Jeremy Doku would take this very specific starting position and wait for the ball to be passed, and then he would go. But they just Haaland is basically just walking left to right, and it's clear that's what he's been instructed to do. There's not a ton of hustle. There's not a ton of running. It's basically, you can try to force a pass through the middle, but we have these front guys here. We have a couple guys centrally who can handle that if you need. So go ahead and go long, and we'll figure it out from there. And it felt like more and more that was Arsenal going long and then inviting City with possession and attacking intent onto them. And eventually, I think that just became too much pressure.
NPCs, is that what the cool kids call it? Yeah.
Yes, an NPC that hasn't been activated. Yes, and that was also Kepa at times in goal.
Yeah, he was semi-activated, I suppose.
I feel bad because it's obviously, is it a howler? Are we calling that a howler?
Yeah, that's about
okay.
When it goes into your gloves, it should stay in the gloves, I think, traditionally.
Well, it's because he's trying to catch the cross cleanly, right? And it's just a little bit too high for him, so he can't get it fully with the palms. He just gets it with the fingers and just not enough. And so, but at the same time, I understand if you parry that, you're giving them a corner probably, or you're putting it back into the field of play if you punch it. And so I can see getting caught in that moment, just obviously the way it kind of insultingly spills for the easy header at the kind of back post. It's not quite a tap-in, but it's not quite a tap-in. And I do have some sympathy for him at the same time, because he just looked pretty frustrated and pretty short of answers, especially with the number of times he was on the ball, not quite sure what to do with it.
I enjoyed the lack of reaction from Kepa. He doesn't put his, normally a goalkeeper would put their head in their hands or they'd sink to the ground. He's just oh well. No biggie, lads. Yeah. Come on, keep playing.
Graham, could I come back to the idea you mentioned about Arsenal not having enough ideas on how to score a goal?
Sure.
Is that an issue going forward? Is it simply set pieces were limited and it's an open play issue? Can we extrapolate on that?
Yeah, I do think it's an issue for this Arsenal team. I do expect in the summer and beyond there will be a correction to that. I just think Mikel Arteta, clearly he has ideas on how he wants Arsenal to have that solid basis. I mean, in this game they play four centre-backs in the defensive line, and ultimately I actually think that cost them in terms of playing out. A lot of their issues stem from there. But he has got a good track record. Obviously he works with the sporting director. Bertra, I think, is the sporting director at Arsenal now. But a lot of the ideas on who Arsenal target kind of come from Mikel Arteta. And he's got a good record of methodically working through transfer targets to fill areas of the squad. They did it last summer, obviously, with a central midfielder and then a centre forward. So I have to imagine he's a smart guy. He's looking at how Arsenal played on Sunday and in other games as well. This is, I make this point repeatedly to the extent that Arsenal fans must think I have an agenda against them. I swear I don't. They just frustrate me as a team. But they have to go out and get a more creative kind of half space player. I'm not even sure Odegaard is that player. I think Eze is that player. That's one of the reasons that him signing for Arsenal changed my opinion on their title chances, but they need more than one solution. Odegaard is way too injured at this point, has been for the last couple of seasons. And I look at that left wing, I've repeatedly made this point as well. Trossard is a good impact player. I'm not the biggest fan of Gabriel Martinelli. That is the easiest place for Arsenal to upgrade going into next season, and I do expect they'll spend big money on someone to give them a little bit more nimbleness on the ball there.
Yeah. My favourite moment of the game, Ryan Cherky doing keep-ups, and Pep Guardiola's reaction to said keep-ups as well. He looked absolutely unimpressed, shall we say, with that. It was like, you're only allowed to do those in Zone 3, not Zone 16. Come on, wrong part of the field.
Did we get his reaction to the keepy-ups, or did we get his reaction to when Ben White let him know how he felt about the keepy-uppies? Because either way, I enjoyed Pep just sort of being like, yep, that's what happens when you juggle. That's the way it's going to go.
Yeah, Benny Blanco completely wiping him out after that. He was unimpressed.
I was pretty impressed by Ben White. Not really any of his like actual on-ball work or anything, but he has that one, which is just a little bit of like, this is what happens, man. Now I got to boot you. And then he has another one, I think earlier, when Doku is trying to stand him up and does that thing that wingers will do where they just stop and stand up. Like, yeah, I'm not even scared of you. And Ben White standing there kicks dirt at him, which was my favorite thing. Just like with one foot, just kind of shuffles dirt, like grass dirt at him. Sort of like, all right, your turn, man. Let's go. I really enjoyed his little head games in there. And I enjoyed, speaking of head games, we get that Pep reaction and we get Pep for the second goal. I always love a coach doing the header, like as the attacker does. Always a good moment. And then they run away celebrating as though they also scored. It feels a bit like he has like remote control at times.
Does indeed. But maybe Arsenal, if City have won the battle, maybe Arsenal have won the war on this season, of course, because they are very much clear in the title race over Manchester City. One other thing to mention from this game, of course, there were two guests of honour sharing the same executive box. Two gentlemen who would never previously share an executive box. They are reunited, Graham, Liam and Noel, watching together in harmony. Were you as overjoyed as I was?
That warms the heart, Ryan Bailey, along with the Carabao chairman being there. That's who I was really interested in. I follow him on Instagram along with the McDonald's CEO. I don't, but for a moment there you weren't sure.
Yeah. Nigel Carabao, that's him, right?
That's him,
yeah.
In the
Very
flesh.
Good. Yeah. Good to see him in his Carabao suit, drinking Carabao. Did enjoy that. Has anyone ever tried? Have you tried it? Is it bad?
I see it in like corner shops. That tends to be its domain. It's not a very mainstream thing. But, when you are a tatty energy drink that's slightly off-brand compared to the mainstream option, you've just got to sponsor the third choice cup competition in English football. You just have to.
It's the only way. Very good. Congratulations to Manchester City on that title win. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, plenty of Premier League to talk about, easy for me to say, including but not limited to the Tyne-Wear Derby and Spurs doing Spurs things. Join us then. Total Soccer Show, welcome back to the weekend review, everybody. Let's go to Tottenham, shall we? Spurs 0, Nottingham Forest 3. A big leap for Forest in their quest for safety. Less so for Tottenham, of course, with this one. Spurs have now not won in the top flight since December 28th. They've lost 6 of their past 7 league games. Taylor, I think things might not be doing very well under Igor Tudor. What's your take on this?
Best manager in the world. It's him and Daniele De Rossi. Yeah, I was pretty high on them after the midweek, even with the elimination from the Champions League. And we talked about it, how it felt like they had turned a page. I felt like they had at least found some like fighting spirit and a little bit of belief and a little bit of togetherness. It felt like they were playing for each other for the shirt. As cliche as that might sound, you can tell when a team is fighting hard for each other and for the fans versus when they are sort of resigned to their fate. I wouldn't go that far with this game, but I will say I believe Joe had some skepticism about Tottenham's turnaround, and I think Graham, I might be misattributing, but Joe's not here, so Graham gets the credit. I think both of you all were a little hesitant to say Spurs are going to be fine, and Graham especially noted that against a team that aren't going to want the ball and are going to make life difficult, it will be up to Tottenham to find a way through. And they found a way through themselves, I guess, by conceding 3. It was woeful and then some for Tottenham. This has just become a pain listening experience, I imagine, because it feels like every week we're talking about how Tottenham have found a new low.
Yeah, I did kind of, not to give myself too much credit, and Joe was the same, did kind of foresee how this task was very different to the Liverpool and Atletico Madrid games. At the same time, also recognised last week that Spurs had a positive couple games, right? And a lot of the tangible stuff had improved. And I agree, Taylor, like the fact that they did show some sort of response in that Atleti game where they continued to fight back, I thought was worth something. And I thought there was in the days leading up to this match, I thought there was a sense of embracing the reality of what this game was. The fans gathered outside to greet the team bus, thousands of Spurs fans outside the stadium with flares and everything. Romero gave a captain's message saying they would fight for everything. Yeah. And then the match started and they didn't. And it was back to the sort of performances that got Spurs into this mess in the first place. So I actually don't really know what to say about where Spurs are as a club right now. Igor Tudor, it feels like obviously Spurs now have 2 weeks until their next game. They do have a few days to sit and simmer on what to do next. But the fact that they are thinking of hiring the third manager of the season just highlights how desperate the situation is. And, you know, it was clearly a bad performance by Spurs. I thought there were two sides to what happened. One side was Tudor's team selection, and primarily the decision to not play Xavi Simons from the start after his performance against Atleti during the week. I think it's one of the most baffling managerial decisions I can remember for a while, because listeners will remember me saying last week that one of the biggest differences with the Atleti performance was how many chances Spurs created in that game, right? And how so much of that match and how so much of the creativity flowed through Xavi Simons. To then drop him for this match was unbelievable. I assumed there was an injury, he was ill. No, none of that. He was just dropped from the first team. And then to compound that, the changes he made at half-time were baffling as well. Lucas Bergvall and Destiny Udogie came on for Mickey van de Ven and Jed Spence. Lucas Bergvall is a good player. I like him, but he's not fit. And he looked it in the second half. He was well off the pace. He could not hang with Gibbs White and with Elliot Anderson in particular in the centre of midfield. And then taking Van de Ven off as well meant that Forest had that physical advantage in the attack, which they used to good effect in the second half. The second side to this match was the players' performance, which was disgraceful. All this talk of managers and transfer strategies and executive mismanagement, which are all valid discussions, and we've all had it. We did a big thing episode about Spurs not so long ago. But behind that, these players have hidden. Behind that discourse, they've hidden. And for them to be as gutless as they were in this game, after everything the fans did before the game and the embracing of and Romero's message and embracing of the we're going to fight for our Premier League survival, when there was so much at stake, for them to perform like this, my head would be on Mars if I was a Spurs fan who had to watch that. The second goal is a shambles. A complete shambles from back to front, where Forest have no pressure on the ball at any point. Spurs are going through the motions. They're not even, they're jogging. And then, I can't remember, is it Nico Williams? No, it's Hudson-Odoi, actually, who gets to the byline down the left side. Cuts it back into Gibbs White, who has ran from the halfway line into the box, completely untracked, and he has like 5 yards of space from the penalty spot to finish. A complete shambles of a performance from Spurs in that second half, and the players really need to take a lot of the blame for it.
Yeah, and I want to stick on Romero for a moment. A player that I think I've given more love to this season than not, even if he hasn't always justified or deserved it, and he certainly didn't in this game. For him to have given those post-match comments is quite rich, given that if you go back and watch that second goal, he steps out of the Spurs back line for kind of no reason. He jogs out like a good 10 yards, theoretically to close somebody down, but he doesn't really. And then more damning than that is that he has now left a 10-yard hole in the middle of the back line, and he is casually jogging back as that play develops. And if he is even going 75% speed, he's absolutely there to intercept that cutback and clear it. But he doesn't. He really is just like casually jogging back, and where he should have been is where the ball goes, and why there's a player wide open in the box the way there was. And that was kind of part and parcel for this whole game. Spurs, just every time it felt like one player would start to get something going, another or two others or three others were just sort of doing their own thing and not really kind of pulling together, not really fighting for each other. And you see the way the game went, I think it's a justifiable result and a very good win for Nottingham Forest at that.
Yeah, I just wonder how many of those Spurs players are thinking, I'll be out of here one way or another before the start of next season. Like, Romero's probably thinking, I'm an Atletico Madrid player by August. Mickey van de Ven, as much as I'm a fan of Mickey van de Ven, he's been well off it in recent matches, as basically every Spurs player apart from maybe Richarlison and like Tell and Simmons were good against Atletico Madrid. Every Spurs player, I think, is they haven't quite embraced what's going on yet, that this club is going down to the Championship. And make no mistake, on current form they are. Like, they're the worst team in the Premier League right now. I've been saying it for a month, and things keep getting worse. And I know West Ham were poor against Aston Villa at the weekend, but they've only lost 3 of their last 10 games. That's now Forest 2 points ahead of Spurs. That's now Leeds, 3 or 4 points ahead of Spurs. So at this point in time, you would bet on Spurs finishing in that bottom 3, which is just, it's completely catastrophic. And as I said a couple of weeks ago, it makes this season the Spurs season in the same way that Leicester winning the title made 15-16 the Leicester season. That's how kind of earth-shattering I think it is for Spurs.
So, Graham, obviously Spurs have got a few days to make a managerial decision here. Is there any planet on which Igor Tudor manages another Tottenham game?
I'm not sure how to answer that, because I guess we thought he was done after the Crystal Palace game at home where they lost 3-1, and then he gets the Liverpool game and gets a bit of response out of that. No, it was that after the Atletico Madrid first leg where the Kinski situation, we thought he was done, and then he gets another match. But there has been legitimate reporting from people like David Ornstein and The Athletic who say Spurs have had replacements lined up for a couple of weeks. So the fact they do have 2 weeks now over the international break, this might be it's kind of now or never, right? If you're going to make the change. I think if you don't make it beyond the international break, you stick with Tudor until the end of the season. And the fact we're even talking about this is ridiculous. And it's just purely about getting someone in who can maybe potentially lift you up to 17th or stay 17th in the table, I guess. But otherwise, this is a complete mess for Spurs.
I saw reporting this weekend, I think Tudor's father passed away over the weekend as well, which is why he stepped away after the result. So I don't know if Spurs will sack him after that. Not that personal life factors into business decisions, which is what the sport is these days, and maybe always. But that is also a possibility of him being like, you know what, I need to focus on other things right now. Like so you never know how that will impact things. Hopefully not for the negative, but I don't see how it couldn't.
Indeed, yes. So precarious situation at the bottom of the Premier League for Tottenham, who are in 17th, 1 point above West Ham. More on them shortly. And Nottingham Forest are 3 points above safety in 16th at the moment. Let's go to the North East, shall we, for the Tyne Weir Derby. Newcastle 1, Sunderland 2. Brian Brobby with the 90th minute winner for Sunderland this one. Two scrambled in goals for Sunderland is how I describe them, but they all count. And Newcastle dropping to 12th, Sunderland, 1 place below Sunderland in this one. Graham, I would describe this as a good, fun game. What would you describe it as?
It was a good, fun game, especially for Sunderland, who are now unbeaten in their last 10 Tyne Weir derbies against Newcastle. In the Premier League, I think there was a cup one in there that they lost a few seasons ago, which is kind of remarkable that Newcastle have been, I guess Sunderland have been the underdogs in that derby for the majority of that time, and yet they continually pull these results out. And that pattern continued with this game. I thought for Newcastle this was a really damaging result, to state the obvious, but now they're out of the Champions League, they're out of the FA Cup, and the brutal reality is they're 12th in the table and Sunderland are above them after this result. And it does feel like Newcastle, I've made this point before, but to repeat it, it feels like they're kind of reaching a crossroads this summer under Eddie Howe, and I know they have a lot of front office stuff to sort out as well, some executive level stuff too. But I think we saw some of why they're facing that crossroads in this game, because Newcastle, they're excellent at what they do, but as soon as they have to adapt and play a different way and maybe control with the ball a little bit more, I don't think they're capable of doing that as things stand. And Sunderland flipped the script on Newcastle. They matched up well physically. They played off Mr. Brobby, who was excellent beyond even his winning goal. He had a great battle with Dan Burn, and he allowed Sunderland to get up the pitch, and then they supported him with runners, which is kind of that's what Newcastle like to do traditionally. And, Sunderland played with real speed and conviction, and Newcastle were overwhelmed by the end. And obviously fatigue might have been a factor. I should mention that Newcastle obviously played on that giant pitch at the Camp Nou during the week, and they did tire as this game went on. But Sunderland, to their credit, did a really good job of exploiting that.
Yeah, rough week for Newcastle, safe to say, after that hammering at the aforementioned Camp Nou and then losing to their closest rival as well. Why don't we go to Brighton, who had a 2-1 win over Liverpool? Danny Welbeck with a brace. He's up to 12 league goals, his most in a Premier League season at the ripe old age of 35. The Seagulls have won 4 of their past 5 games. That's as many as in their previous 18 top flight games as well. And Arne Slot's Liverpool have had just 1 point from their past 3 league matches. 10 defeats in the season, more than the last 2 seasons combined. Liverpool just can't get it going, Graham, can they?
Yeah, 1 step forward, 1 step back all the time for Liverpool, and that was
Paula
certainly the
Abdul
case
had
in this.
lyrics that were like that, didn't she?
Paula Abdul,
track, right?
Wow, that's a really current reference there. Paula Abdul. Have we had her on the show before?
The cat was in that one. The
cat, yeah, that's right, yeah. You're good for a reference, Ryan Bailey. We spoke about Liverpool's performance against Galatasaray in the Champions League last week. I think I said something to the effect of maybe their best performance of the whole season. And then this match was one of the worst of the whole season. Now, the early Ugo Ekitike injury, should mention, I think that probably unsettled them a little bit. But still, it was really, really poor by Liverpool. And time again, they failed to press the ball. You look at how much space Brighton had to get the ball into the box for the first goal. There was huge gaps between defenders. Very little threat in the attack as well. And this was the fourth time this season that Liverpool have followed up a Champions League game with a defeat in the league. And they did look quite tired, similar to Newcastle. And I do have some sympathy for that. Fatigue was a factor. But that's the job if you're Liverpool. You need to find that consistency between Europe and the league. And they haven't been able to do that all season. And just finally, on Danny Welbeck, because he was brilliant in this game, even beyond his goals, I do wonder if Thomas Tuchel has had any second thoughts after this performance, not including him in his 35-man England squad for this camp. I feel like, I know he's 35 years old, Danny Welbeck, but looking at the player he is right now, he's surely the second best English striker. I'd have him over Calvert-Lewin. I'd have him over Ollie Watkins, who I know isn't in this camp, but nonetheless, I would have him in my England team.
Yeah.
Or squad, rather.
Just the 5 goalkeepers as well. That always gets me.
That's right, yeah.
Anyway. One other game we should touch on the Premier League. Everton 3, Chelsea 0. Everton creeping towards European qualification, it seems, at this point, or even Champions League qualification, I should say. Chelsea, on the other hand, losing 4 games in a row in all competitions now. And we had that pretty well publicised stat that Chelsea, in every single Premier League game this season, have been outrun by their opponents. Taylor, what are we making of Liam Rosenior, who had another classic post-matcher as well, I think, in this one?
I mean, I'm going to say similar to Spurs. It's almost like the manager might not be fully the problem when it comes to some of these clubs. I don't think he is covering himself in glory, certainly. The last 4 games exemplify that pretty resoundingly, with many goals conceded, very few scored by comparison. That stat is kind of insane about how much they've been outrun and outworked. And it just feels like a team that are kind of listless. That's a lot of very talented players kind of assembled to be greater than the sum of their parts, which would make them an elite team. But they are not functioning in that way. And I look at this team, and there are individuals who on their day can be the people that you look to be the kind of leaders to elevate a performance, to lead by example. But it just feels like we're not getting any of that consistently enough from Chelsea to feel like things are like going to turn around and be moving in the right direction. It's certainly not a catastrophic season by any stretch, but you would assume with the spend, with the talent at their disposal, 6th is not what they are targeting. Certainly at the very least Europa League, and probably higher than that, which is still very much a possibility. It's just they need to find that form very quickly, or maybe they need Igor Tudor. Maybe it's a manager swap. That changes everything, probably?
No.
Correct.
We could make it like a Serie A sort of situation. We could just swap the managers all the way around. I mean, I do think as much as from the start, Liam Rosenior has just not been my guy. Gives me the ick, to be perfectly honest. But he's a symptom, not a cause, of what Chelsea are. Similar to what echo what you were saying, Taylor. He's not the reason Chelsea are in this situation, and I kind of feel like Chelsea. The reason Chelsea sacked Enzo Maresca was not bad results. It's because he blew up that situation and took on his own employers and spoke to Man City about that job. So I kind of feel like if Chelsea they're not a normal club, Chelsea. They're not building a team to win trophies. They're a player trading model, and having a manager who accepts that role, having been at Strasbourg previously as part of Bluco, feel like all I'm hearing is outside noise about Liam Rosenior, and actually maybe Chelsea internally are quite happy with what they've got. I can understand though why fans are upset.
Indeed, yes. Chelsea not doing terribly well at the moment. They're in 6th place, as noted. There are other Premier League games to talk about. Villa's 2-0 win over West Ham, quite consequential for the relegation battle. Bournemouth drawing with Man United. Fulham's win over Burnley. Leeds tying with Brentford. All of those games, we'll talk about those on Weekend Review Extra on our bonus feed, because we just don't have time. We've got a Madrid Derby to get to right after this break. Total Soccer Show, welcome back to the weekend review. Real Madrid 3, Atletico Madrid 2. Vinny Jr. scoring twice and Fede Valverde getting his marching orders in a pretty breathless Madrid derby on Sunday. Oh, Graham, where do we want to start with this one? Can we start with that Molina goal, which was wonderful? The diagonal from distance is one of my favourite of the great goals, I'd say.
It's an absolute belter, and the context of that goal is Molina. We didn't get a chance to talk about this last week. It was in my notes, but we didn't get to it. He scored a very similar belter from the other side against Getafe last week, or the week before this game. So Molina has just all of a sudden realised how to shoot. So watch out. He might have a few more before the end of the season.
It's the Happy Gilmore moment. Like, I should do
exactly.
that every time.
He's the Happy Gilmore of soccer. It was an incredible goal, and I thought this was an incredible game. I thought it would be, considering how strong both teams are in the attack, and Atleti really contributed to that. I thought Lookman was good, Alvarez was brilliant. It helps when Molina's thwacking in shots from the back of the net from 30 yards out, but Real Madrid, obviously end up winning this game, and they just have so many different ways to hurt opponents, and that includes the players they brought off the bench in this game. Mbappe and Bellingham back from injury. Most notably, though, Trent Alexander-Arnold, who was dropped from the starting lineup because he was late to training. But when he comes onto the pitch in the second half, the way he carried the ball forward into midfield, and then that opened up the space for the pass out to Vinicius, and it's an incredible pass, and Vinicius is smart enough to hold his run. He just withdraws himself slightly because he knows that space is opening up, and he knows Trent can find him. And obviously the finish was brilliant. But when Real Madrid are able to impose themselves on games, which doesn't happen very often, they're so difficult to play against. And Trent Alexander-Arnold, he feels like the conundrum that in a weird way might solve something for Real Madrid, where he does have that ability on the ball. He does give them that extra dimension. And we saw that in the second half with his impact off the bench.
Graham, I'm not sure who your commentary team was, but over here, it was Ian Dark and Steve McManaman, I believe. Did your commentary team mention whether or not Trent Alexander-Arnold was in the England team? Because that came up for about 15 minutes of the game.
So we had, I forget the name of the lead commentator, but we had Sidlow, and he did not, I don't think he mentioned it once. He was talking about why he was late for training. Was Ian Dark, did he ever be in his bonnet about it? Or?
There was much consternation about how Real Madrid's starting right back could not be in the England team, even as a reserve player. Yes.
Is that not a valid point?
I mean, I think another point they were making is, like, you could say it's injuries have kept him out, but then Jude Bellingham is in the latest squad, and he has been plenty injured himself. So it's an interesting point. I would argue Danny Welbeck deserves to be in ahead of either one of them. So there, Ryan, in your face. I really enjoyed
goalkeeper,
this
why
game.
not?
I can't believe. It should be. I can't believe how fun this game was. It was not one that I was super excited to watch. I think because I feel like I've seen a lot of these games, and though I think Atleti tend to have a better result away in these fixtures, it still felt like so often it's a kind of routine, if uninspiring, Real Madrid victory. This felt like a pretty important one, given how much Atleti were throwing at this, how many problems they caused, but how much Madrid were able to find a way through. And I thought Vinicius was critical in that, obviously with the goals and the penalty, but just posing that consistent threat and being smart in his runs, being smart when he would try individually, when he would be a decoy run. I thought it was an excellent game from him, and really just a strong performance from a Madrid team that finished, I think, with a stronger 11 than they started with. And it felt truly Galactico when they had everybody on that pitch, when it was Trent Alexander-Arnold and Jude Bellingham and Mbappe and Vinicius and everybody else who's been playing so well for Real Madrid. It just felt like a very strong and significant response, performance, win, all the above.
Yeah, just Taylor, on Atleti very quickly. I'm reluctant to say they've changed Atleti, because when I look at their approach, it's nothing new from Simeone. I don't get the sense there's a new ideology underpinning their performances recently. But they have been really fun to watch in the last, I would say, 6 weeks. They're scoring a lot of goals, and I wonder if it's just as simple as having signed Ademola Lookman, they've got another true attacker on the field, because that left-sided midfielder previously, would have been Alex Baena, or it would have been really a central midfielder that would be, Marcus Llorente's played that position a lot for Atleti. He plays right back in this game. And to have Lookman joining the attack with, Griezmann and Sorloth, who I don't think starts this. No, it's not Sorloth who starts this game. It's Alvarez who starts this game. But to have Sorloth coming on as well as another option, it just feels like Atleti have more bodies in the attack and more like quality attackers. Like, that is one of the most stacked attacks, one of the most stacked forward lines in European football. And I'm having a good time watching them at the moment. The frustrating thing for Atleti in this game will be that they shot themselves in the foot for 2 of the Real Madrid goals. Hancho makes a bad tackle on Brahim for the penalty that leads to the equaliser, obviously, for the first goal. And then Jimenez wasn't strong enough in the tackle on Valverde, and that then allows Valverde, the freight train, into the box to put Real Madrid ahead. And both those moments sort of compromise Atleti's game plan at 2 crucial points of the match, where Atleti go in ahead at half-time, and then that first mistake comes early in the second half, and they're kind of chasing their tails from that point. But I thought for a lot of the first half, Atleti, they were able to block the passing lanes for Real Madrid. They limited Vinicius' involvement by doing that. Güler was still having plenty of the ball. Brahim was a threat with some of his dribbling, but wasn't really resulting in much in the way of clear-cut opportunities. The problem was the second half was just a lot more ragged from Atletico Madrid, and that cost them.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of why I come away being more impressed by this result from Madrid, because you're right, Graham. 2 of the goals are Atleti basically gifting them opportunities. It's still Madrid taking them, the Valverde one especially. He's got to finish it. It's a Trivela finish, I think. Credit to him for doing it. But I think against an Atleti team that I'm going to assume their defensive training is so much more focused and difficult than their attacking training. Because I spent a lot of time in this game, my notes are very all over the place, trying to figure out what Atletico do defensively. Because on the surface, it at times looks like a really standard 4-4-2. Then at times it's just kind of a standard back 4, sometimes with 4 ahead. But then sometimes it's a 5-3-2, and sometimes it's a 4-5-1. And it seems like there are myriad assignments for individual defenders based on the personnel around them, and sometimes you're tracking a striker when they go deep to try to facilitate possession. Sometimes you're kind of holding your position, and an attacker is dropping in to cover that player who's gone deeper. There's just a lot of rotations and a lot of shape-shifting almost to what Atleti are doing at any given moment, and I think it just makes it extremely difficult to break them down without leaving yourself potentially exposed. And so that Madrid are able to find a way through and get the win, again, I think speaks volumes. The other Atleti player, though, I wanted to spotlight for a moment is Giuliano Simeone, who is, I've talked about him before as being one of my favorite, just chaotic players. He was a full chaos demon in this game. He has the insane, Billy Baldwin flick, that's what we've dubbed it, for the Ademola Lookman goal, where it's kind of he's sprinting towards the near post and he gets it with his trailing leg, the instep of his trailing leg to settle perfectly. But he also kind of gets Johnny Cardoso booked because Cardoso is about to make a defensive play, and then Simeone comes flying in, and the Madrid player stops, and so Johnny Cardoso just barrels into him and gets a yellow for it, which isn't really on Simeone. He's just doing Atleti things. But he has another one, I think, in the first half when it's, you remember when Carvajal, Graham, comes flying in for no reason? It's a long ball. Carvajal just comes sprinting and tries to make a play and just completely does nothing other than hit Gio Simeone. Do you remember that?
No, you're not talking about the Llorente tackle inside the box in the first half, no? That was another Carvajal chaos moment. I don't remember the Gio.
No, there's one where they go long, I think, from the goalkeeper, and it's a 50-50 that I keep calling him Gio, but it's Giu Simeone is going for. He has, I forget who's on his back, but Carvajal just comes truly flying in to try to make a play and does nothing but hit Simeone. Simeone then is down holding his leg, writhing in pain. Seems like some of it is genuine, but it cuts away to show you the replays and it cuts back, and there are 4 Atleti players standing around talking to the goalkeeper, clearly being come on, man, that's a foul. As Simeone is just continuing to flop around on the ground and scream in pain, and no one is helping him. No medical staff are there. And it just becomes apparent that, he's selling this. They know he's selling this. They know what this is. They're not worried about that. They want to know why there wasn't a card. And just that moment of him, I think, being in some pain, but just fully selling it while even his teammates are it's a bit much, man. We get it. It's fine. They gave us the foul. Just get up, dust yourself off, keep going. He really can cover the ground from being this, technically superb player to being just this dark arts practitioner so quickly, and it's what makes him so wonderful.
Well, he has his father's son, after all, so it's to be expected.
Very good. Real Madrid obviously getting the better of this derby. They are in second place in the Liga, 4 points behind Barcelona, Graham, who got that 1-0 win over Rayo Vallecano as well. Anything to say on
I didn't actually catch any of the Barcelona game. I saw Rafinha. Did he score this tells you how little I saw of it. I'm unclear on who actually scored the goal. But yes, it had Real Madrid... It was Araujo. I did see that, actually. Damn. But had Real Madrid not won the Madrid Derby, I mean, I already feel like it's kind of beyond Real Madrid, frankly. I mean, they've turned the corner. This is their best period of the entire season. But the real test, and again, this is a weird sentence to say, the real test is now going to be when they have Mbappe and Bellingham back in the team, and how does that fit into the lineup, and how can they continue to play this like semi-coherent style of play? Spoiler alert, I don't think they can, so I very much have my money on Barcelona to see this through.
All right. And also worth noting that Real Madrid and Barcelona are on the other side of the Champions League bracket. Real Madrid and Atletico Madrid are also on the other side of the Champions League bracket to one another, so they could only meet Real Madrid, those two Spanish teams, in the final. Both have tricky paths. Obviously, Barcelona and Atleti playing each other in the quarterfinals, so looking forward to that one. We've got time on this feed for one more league to visit. Why don't we go to Germany, Taylor, where Bayern Munich got a 4-0 win over Union Berlin, scoring 3 times in 7 minutes. Pretty casual. Harry Kane, of course, getting on the score sheet. He is now the 10th highest goal scorer in the history of Bayern Munich after 3 seasons.
We talked about it many, many times. It's an understatement. He's just so freaking good, man. Like, I don't know of another person who finishes as consistently as he does and makes it look so easy, to the point where he misses a really high degree of difficulty chance in the first half, where he kind of gets around the goalkeeper. He's shooting from like the 6-inch line, more or less, while running at full speed while falling over, and he puts it wide of the post. And even that one, you're still like, I can't believe he missed that. And he does miss a kind of breakaway one-on-one. Not quite sitter, but still it's one-on-one. You expect him to finish that. And it felt sort of like, what is this? How could he possibly have missed? Because the goal he does score is him just receiving the ball at the top of the box, taking a touch, taking another touch, knowing exactly where he is, and then just finishing with expert like finesse, but still with plenty of power behind it. Serge Gnabry has some great finishes in this one as well. He is, I think, for the last goal, if you watch it in slow-mo from behind the goal, so you see the ball and you see the strike, his first touch has the ball like spinning like a Harlem Globetrotter style, and then he hits the volley with like extreme speed and fury and finishes quite well. Another really good win for Bayern. Not the biggest win of the weekend, though. That would go to Leipzig. I thought Leipzig-Hoffenheim would be a fun, open, back-and-forth affair, and it was for Leipzig, less so for Hoffenheim, who lose this one 5-0. It was 4-0 at halftime. It could have been 5. Leipzig had a player like 1 inch offside. I think it was Diomande was offside, and he was excellent in this game, as we've come to expect. He seemed to like separate his shoulder at one point in a fairly innocuous challenge, was out for treatment, came back on, played until like the 60th minute or so, and then he came off, still rubbing that shoulder. So we'll have to see how he is able to respond, or if he's able to improve, or what kind of negative impact that has on his fitness. But obviously it's the international break, so he's got some time. Dortmund had another wild weekend. They were 2-0 down in their game to Hamburg, having missed a penalty. Nemanja steps up and misses a penalty right at the end of the first half. Could have been 2-1 going into halftime. Instead, it's 2-0. Dortmund are down. Then they get another penalty, and Rami Ben-Sebaini, of all people, steps up. Didn't realize he has like a perfect penalty record. He is the calmest penalty taker I think I've ever seen. It's a very casual in-step pass into the goal. And then he does it again later on in this game. Dortmund, from the 73rd minute on, score 3 goals, look pretty comfortable in the end, get some penalties along the way, certainly. Guirassy gets a header that he then volleys the rebound of the header to get the equalizing goal. But it's a good performance for Dortmund and a good fight back at that. Mainz have a huge win over Eintracht Frankfurt that moves them away from the relegation zone. With Frankfurt, it felt like starting to turn a corner. It did not seem like Mainz were going to be able to find a way to get points here, so that they get all 3 is pretty stellar for them. Stuttgart and Cengiz Ünder continued to keep things rolling. He gets 2 assists in this one against Augsburg in a really comfortable win. It finishes, I think, 5-2 in the end. And it's a credit to Undav, and probably the reason, or one of the many reasons why he's been included in the Germany squad for the upcoming friendlies. That fifth goal, it's basically him in on goal, and he is already on 2. You wouldn't begrudge him for going for the hat trick, and instead he just kind of passes it off to a teammate to score. And just the unselfishness there to not go for the glory, but to instead just make sure that another goal happens and it's another teammate who gets a goal. Credit to him, credit to Stuttgart. And then lack of credit to Wolfsburg, who are one step closer to the brink. They were truly awful against Werder Bremen. They created very, very, very little. They have a couple set-piece opportunities, but not much more than that. They're on a new manager. It's their old manager who's back, and that always works. But thus far, it has not. They seem like they are going to continue to plummet down the table and stay in that relegation zone unless things change in dramatic fashion. Maybe Igor Tudor goes there and they do a managerial swap. It's just going to be a series of swaps to figure out a way to inspire confidence in any number of teams.
Taylor, are you Igor Tudor's agent? Because you've suggested a few jobs for him today.
It's more so noting how many clubs are like, you know what? New manager should fix this weird discombobulated roster that has a bunch of injuries and personnel who don't quite fit. Oh, they didn't? Well, then it's on them. Certainly not anybody who assembled these players and tried to build a coherent roster that wasn't at all coherent. No, it's the new guy who came in. He's the problem.
Okay, wonderful
and
stuff.
Igor Tudor will fix it all.
Yeah, generally speaking, yes, he is our saviour.
Yes, of course.
He's doing great work, as always. Thank you very much, Taylor, for your Bundesliga roundup there. We didn't get time to touch on Serie A, where Christian Pulisic got an assist for Milan in their win. Inter and Juve dropped points as well. Come over to Weekend Review Extra to hear that and much, much, much more. Patreon.com/Total Soccer Show for more information on that one. But for now, Taylor Rockwell, thank you very much indeed for your analysis and all that you do.
Thank you very much, Ryan Bailey.
Thank you very much, Graham Ruthven, sir.
Thank you, Ryan Bailey.
And thank you, listener, the mostest. We'll be back on this feed very shortly. But for now, bye.